In the year 1003, a Norse explorer named Leif Erikson stepped onto a land he called Vinland, modern-day Newfoundland. He built a small settlement and then he left. But what if he didn't? What if the Vikings stayed? What if they built cities, forged alliances with native peoples, and created a civilization that would change the entire course of human history? This is the story of a world where America was colonized 500 years early, not by Spain, not by England, but by the Norse. In our timeline, the Viking settlement at Lance O Meadows lasted maybe a decade. Conflicts with indigenous peoples, harsh winters, and the sheer distance from Scandinavia made it unsustainable. But let's change one variable. Let's say the Norse managed to establish trade, not war, with the local Beothuk and Mi'kmaq peoples. Furs, timber, and dried fish flowing back to Greenland and Iceland. Iron tools and weapons flowing the other way. By the 1050s, Vinland isn't just a camp, it's a growing colony of 300 to 500 people. Families arrive. A second settlement appears further south, in what we'd call Nova Scotia. The Norse call it Skogaland, the forest land. The key difference? Unlike Columbus, the Vikings aren't looking for gold. They want land, and North America has more land than any European could imagine. Here's where the timeline gets really interesting. In our world, European colonization was defined by conquest. The Spanish conquered the Aztecs. The English displaced native populations. Disease and violence wiped out millions. But the Vikings of the 11th century are different. There are only a few hundred of them. They can't conquer anyone. They need allies. And the indigenous peoples of the Northeast have something the Norse desperately need: knowledge of the land. By 1100, intermarriage between Norse settlers and Mi'kmaq and Beothuk communities creates a hybrid culture. Children grow up speaking both Old Norse and Algonquian languages. They hunt with bows but forge with iron. They build long houses but insulate them with birch bark. This isn't European colonization as we know it. This is something entirely new, a fusion civilization on the edge of the known world. By the 1200s, the Norse Vinlanders, as we'll call them, have expanded south along the coast and inland along the St. Lawrence River. Their population has grown to several thousand, boosted by continued immigration from Iceland and Greenland, where conditions are worsening due to the medieval climate shift. They've adopted corn agriculture from their indigenous neighbors, a game changer that allows permanent settlements far from the coast. They're trading copper from the Great Lakes region and furs that make their way all the way back to Scandinavia. And here's the crucial detail: they bring European diseases, but slowly. Over generations, not in one catastrophic wave. This gives indigenous populations time to develop partial immunity. The apocalyptic 90% death rates of the 1500s, they never happen. By 1300, the eastern seaboard of North America is home to a patchwork of Norse-influenced, indigenous and hybrid communities, all with iron tools, all with resistance to European diseases, and all far more prepared for what's coming from the east. It's 1492. Christopher Columbus sails west, but when he reaches the Caribbean and sends expeditions north, the reports that come back are shocking. There are already cities here, not the stone pyramids of the Aztecs, but fortified towns with iron-reinforced walls, harbors full of ocean-going vessels, and populations that are not dying of smallpox. The Vinlander civilization stretches from Newfoundland to the Chesapeake Bay. They're not a European power. They're something Europe has never encountered. A transatlantic hybrid culture with 500 years of history on this continent. And they have absolutely no intention of being conquered. Spain sends expeditions. They're repelled. England tries a century later. Same result. The Vinlanders know the terrain. They have iron weapons and, most critically, their indigenous allies number in the millions, populations that were never decimated by disease. Fast forward to the modern day. In this alternate timeline, North America was never colonized by Western Europe in the way we know. Instead, Vinland evolved into a sovereign nation, one of the oldest continuous civilizations in the Western Hemisphere. It's a culture where Old Norse and Algonquian languages merged into something unique, where democracy drew from both the Norse Thing assemblies and the Haudenosaunee Great Law of Peace, where the indigenous peoples of North America were never subjected to genocide. The United States, as we know it, it never existed. Instead, the continent is shared between Vinland in the east, the great indigenous confederacies of the interior, and later European settlements confined to the Gulf Coast and the far west. One small decision, to stay instead of leave, and the entire history of two continents is rewritten. That's the power of a single fork in history. If this journey into an alternate timeline fascinated you, subscribe and hit the bell, because every week we explore a new world that almost was. Next time, what if Rome never fell? I'll see you in the next timeline.